Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes spoilers ahead. There are 1,000,001 theories of what happened to Lucy Gray at the end of the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Some people think that Lucy Gray came back to District 12 and became Greasy Say and worked in the Hob. There's another theory that Lucy Gray somehow finds District 13 and becomes President Coin. I've seen theories that she was picked up and brought to the Capitol as an AVOX or made to be a performer. This might be controversial, but I think Lucy Gray died. As much as you want to root for her, because she is the person you're supposed to be rooting for, the story is a tragedy. And Lucy Gray isn't the protagonist of the story. Snow is. Even if he's a bad person, he's still the protagonist. And the moment that Snow really becomes the Snow that we know, his mother has died. Sejanus has died. He's killed multiple people. He gave up all of the sentimental items in his life except for his father's compass. Coriolanus wasn't necessarily lying when he said he killed his old self, because he really did. All of those parts of him were dead. I think Lucy Gray is one of those things. That's part of the tragedy. We really don't want her to be dead. There's 1,000,000 theories about how she could not be dead, but I think she's dead. But I don't think that means the theory should stop, because it's a mystery. I think she's dead, but I don't know she's dead. Suzanne Collins could come out tomorrow and be like, Lucy Gray made her way back to District 12, and she was Greasy Say. And I would be like, okay, Suzanne Collins is a skilled enough author that she'd figure out how to make it work. But I don't think there's any universe where Lucy Gray could have made it back to the districts and not been unalived. The Capitol had contacts in 12 who knew that Lucy Gray was gone, and she did have a target on her back from the mayor, so it was easy to assume that maybe, she got what they thought she had coming to her. But if they did come to that conclusion, and then she just miraculously reappeared one day, I don't know how they would explain that. Especially because Lucy Gray, even if she wasn't known for winning the Hunger Games in 12, she was very well known in 12 for being a performer. People would 100% notice and recognize if she somehow made her way back. Just for me, I don't think she made it, but I really like to theorize about the other possibilities. I grew up evangelical. I grew up learning rapture theology and hearing a lot about the end times and what the end times looked like. There were 1,000,000 signs that we were told to look out for that were this is the sign that the rapture is coming. Do you want to know what one of those big signs were that we were supposed to look for? The entire world turning on the country of Israel. I need you to know that there are people who will see the atrocities happening and know that there are atrocities happening. This isn't even just denying that there's a genocide happening. They will see it happen and know that that is what's happening, and they will still back Israel because they literally believe that if they don't, it will trigger world-ending events. And yes, a lot of people are just ignorant. But there are people who see and can acknowledge and know that what is happening there is wrong. But they will still support Israel purely because of their rapture theology. There are a lot of evangelical Christians in the United States who buy into this theology. I know because I grew up being taught this theology, and I was terrified of the day that the world turned on Israel. I thought it was going to be just the worst thing that could happen. And it is genuinely surreal to be out of that and to see objectively the things that are happening in our world, and then watch the people who are supposed to be living through love and advocating and reaching out to people in other countries who are, displaced and need food and water. They will fight tooth and nail to keep a pregnant person from getting an abortion because they care so much about the kids. But if you tell them 3,200 Palestinian children have been killed, they'll tell you it's just a conflict. How does that not make you sick to your stomach? Potential Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes spoilers ahead, but what would have happened in some alternate universe where Lucy Gray was still in District 12 for the 75th Games? This is assuming that all of the rest of the events of the book are just as they happened up until the Quarter Quell. A few possibilities. I think he could have arranged for some kind of accident to happen to Peeta and Haymitch, and then he would introduce a clause to the rules of the games and say that if there were no male tributes to be reaped, then 2 female tributes could be reaped, because I think he'd want to put them both in the arena somehow. Either that, or The Hunger Games for that year would not be that the victors would be reaped, it would be that all of the victors are in the arena. And that's the quarter quell. But actually, genuinely, how devastating would that be for her to have survived the games because of snow and then be forced back into the arena because of snow? That would be devastating. Oh my god. Y'all, the Hunger Games fandom is nothing if not determined to get a longer version of the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes movie. Listen, if we were able to get Taylor Swift to release the 10-minute long version of All Too Well, just because she insinuated that it existed, we can get another hour of this movie. Together we can make a difference. I'm going to put this where you can find it on my page. I'm not using specific keywords because otherwise you won't see this. But if you would like to contribute to the cause, I think we can really make this happen together. Why were there mockingjays in the first Hunger Games arena if President Snow hated them so much? Honestly, I don't know. I was literally grappling with this question like yesterday because I was like, I just don't know. I have a few ideas. One of them is that they build the arenas over existing land and like whatever animals inhabit it anyways. And so there were just mockingjays already present. Another idea I have is that there were aspects of all of the districts in the 74th arena, and I feel like maybe it was meant to give the tributes a false sense of security for where they wanted to run, because the mockingjays were in the forest, which was Katniss's like safe place where she ran, which was where she ended up getting like blasted with the fireballs and stuff. So I feel like maybe they wanted the tributes to go to, you know, where they were going to feel the safest, to give them like a false sense of security. Another possibility is that Seneca just did not understand the significance of mockingjays and put them in the arena without understanding the significance of them and how much of a problem they could be. And another slightly off the wall idea I had was that we know that the rebellion was active within the Capitol higher-ups. And so part of me wonders if, you know, somebody on the inside had a hand in setting up the arena and, you know, fucked with it a little bit. I don't really buy that theory, though. There's so many different possibilities for why they could have been there. What do you guys think? If you aren't aware, a couple of days ago, a petition was started for Lionsgate to release an extended edition of the new Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes movie. But you can also leave a reason as to why you signed the petition, and people can see them. So here are some of my favorite reasons people gave for signing this petition. Young Snow is hot. I'm autistic. I need to see more cunty choreo. I need more slutty red skirts. I need to see all of the book's details. Also, hot snow. I don't know. I've never even watched the movies. I need it. And my wife needs it more. Show us the part where Choreo and Sejanus kiss. I want to see more of the homicidal Slim Shady. I would really love the extra hour of Batty Snow. Tom Blythe supremacy. I need more Tom Blythe. We need more Tom Blythe. I love the Hunger Games and Tom Blythe. And Eminem is sexy. We need more Buzzcut Snow. I need to see more of Tom Blythe because he was hot as snow. Another reason is I love the Hunger Games, so yeah. You know what? Screw this. Screw the Capitol. Screw President Snow. Screw this entire system. We should have riots in the Capitol. What do you say? Nice one, that's cute. Try again. My stylist dressed me up as a bird. This 17-year-old girl reminds me of my ex-girlfriend. I would like to start a civil war. Do you know how much of a flex it is as an author to have such good world building that any kind of fanon, headcanoning situation just honestly doesn't seem that interesting? The only headcanons I really have about the Hunger Games are like really silly off-the-wall ones that I don't actually believe, or inferences and theories that I have about things that could have happened that aren't explicitly said in the books. I do have a little special soft spot for Haymitch and Effie, like post-war, that I really like to center my little headcanoning fangirl space around. But as far as the actual story of the Hunger Games and the canon, like, I don't want to add anything to it because it's so good as it is. And it honestly feels like I'm defacing it or something if I try to reshape the world in any way in the same way I used to with Harry Potter, because I used to be super active in the Harry Potter fanfiction community. Like, oddly, the best thing about Harry Potter is the fact that it sucks. What do you mean is the owl going to survive? If one thing makes it to the end of this series, it's going to be the pet of the main character. How does Hermione get to all of her classes in the third book? By dropping some of them? I don't know. Time travel? Dude, have you heard of a paradox? Is Dumbledore a good person? How many children have died on his watch? And he hasn't done anything about it. Dumbledore's the villain. Why is everyone missing the point here? Voldemort? No, Voldemort was the distraction. Like, he's really not that special. He's only got a seventh of his soul. Fred and George? No, they were in on it the whole time. You think they didn't see Peter Pettigrew's name on the map? Yeah, no, this was an inside job, dude. When did the war start? Book 4. Why would it be book 6? After a student died in front of the whole school? Are you kidding? Everybody would be rioting. The wizarding world after Voldemort died? I mean, it's really not that simple. He wasn't the only wizard racist. Why would Harry ever become a wizard cop? The only thing he's talked about for 7 books is how much he loves Defense Against the Dark Arts. This is my Hunger Games blunt rotation. You're not on it. You don't even get to be at the bottom of the list. Hell yeah. You may be 12, but you are also about to be unalived, so I feel like you should get one last hurrah. Peeta, you're on there, obviously. Cinna, obviously. Clearly. Let's see. I'm looking for a specific. Lucy Gray is an interesting one because I feel like she could either be a really great person to smoke a joint with, or like the person who is kind of unbearable to be around when they get stoned. Like, you know, there's always that one person who they get like performatively silly, and I feel like it might be that. But I still would be curious to see how it went. So she's on my list. Finnick, obviously. Let's see. So Katniss, this is one that I really want to have in my rotation because she needs this. She needs to let loose a little bit, you know? Like, Joanna, top of my list. Easy. Easy. Effie, like, clearly, obviously. President Snow. Okay. Here's my defense for why President Snow would be on my rotation. I think it would be really funny to watch him green out, and I think that he would get, like, extremely paranoid, and it would be really fun to mess with him. So that is why he's on my list. And I'm sure you know the last person who's going to be on my list. Could you have guessed? What do you think of my rotation? I for real believe you'd all love Harry Potter if J.K. Rowling wasn't a TERF. Yes, you are correct. I loved Harry Potter before I found out that J.K. Rowling was a TERF. Yeah, you're right. Even before I knew all of this that we know about J.K. Rowling, I did not like her as a person. I grew up in the Harry Potter fan fiction community, which is very different from, like, the Harry Potter canon community. There were lots and lots of conversations already being had about the problems with J.K. Rowling and the problems within Harry Potter and the problems with how she represented people of all different groups. And we, as a fan fiction community, wanted to change that and take things into our own hands and have ourselves represented back in what we liked to read. But at least in my experience, as time went on and J.K. Rowling became a lot more outspoken about her beliefs, Harry Potter started to draw in a really toxic crowd. Even within the fanfiction community I was a part of, there were a lot of TERFs. There were a lot of people who would back J.K. Rowling tooth and nail because she created something that they loved so much. There were people who started being a fan of Harry Potter just because they are hateful people and wanted to support a hateful person. The morale of the community was extremely low. The joy that I previously got from my favorite piece of media was gone. The books and movies I had loved do not have any of the same joy they used to bring me. Harry Potter was my autistic special interest for years, and it might seem kind of difficult to understand, but when you lose something like that, it is devastating. Like, you are grieving this part of you that you lost. I would love Harry Potter still if J.K. Rowling wasn't who she was. And that doesn't mean that there aren't problems with the plot and the pacing and the storyline and everything, but there were strengths within Harry Potter that made it really fun to be a part of the fan fiction community. And J.K. Rowling took that away. And I no longer get enjoyment out of creating something new from her characters. So instead, I am going to analyze the writing as it is and take it at face value. And at face value, it's shit. What the world looks like outside of Panem is a very common topic of conversation among Hunger Games fans. Some people take the books at face value, that significant climate change had taken place, and there were no resources, and there was unrest, and ultimately pretty much all civilization outside of Panem was destroyed. Some people think that life outside of Panem was extremely normal, and that Panem was very much like North Korea, and nobody could get in, nobody could get out. As far as what I personally think, I think it's a little bit of both. I do think that climate change and a lack of resources and a high population caused a lot of unrest, not just in North America, but all over the world. And I don't doubt that the civilization of planet Earth was decimated. But I don't think humanity and civilization outside of Panem were eliminated. I think that there are civilizations all over the world, just a lot more spread out. And I also think that there are a lot more people who are travelers, hunter-gatherers. They live off the land or, make their own way wherever they live. I'm sure there are places who have technology and things that have progressed just as much as the capitals, maybe even more if the capital wants to keep the population of Panem under the impression that they are all powerful when they know there are other powers that are greater than them out there. And I also don't doubt that there are other dictatorships just like the capital and just like District 13. And assuming there was civilization outside of Panem after the war, I would be really interested to see what all of the people's reactions were to finding out that there was an entire other world out there, finding out that there were other languages, other religions, holidays, songs, all of these things that they had never been exposed to before. Do you think this is a story about a bunch of wizards going to a magical school? No, this is a story about systematic oppression. There's a slave race that apparently enjoys being slaves. And there's only one character that's actually upset about this. The villain? Who do you think an entire race of people sees muggles struggling to survive and they don't want to use their magic to help them because it would be inconvenient? That's the problem. Why wouldn't we like Dudley? He was a child. Because he was fat? What does that have to do with anything? Dudley was just as much of a victim as Harry was, and he comes back in the 5th book and is one of the main good guys. What happened when Voldemort died? Did you get to the end of the book? Harry doesn't kill Voldemort, he kills Umbridge. Voldemort was a bad guy because the people didn't like him, but Umbridge was the source of the problem. Have you been keeping up? What are these name suggestions you gave me? Did you go to like a Latin translator and just search moon, moon, wolf, wolf, black dog, constellation? I don't like any of these. Here's more Effie and Haymitch headcanons. Every time I talk about my headcanons, people are like, there's no way that could have happened. Yeah, that's the point. It's a headcanon. It's in my head. But I do think that Katniss, Peeta, Haymitch, and Effie have a little sesh every night before they go to bed, and Haymitch will roll 2. One for him and one for Effie, without even asking. He rolls it infused with rose petals and lavender also, because obviously. I do think that she moved out to the country with Haymitch in District 12, and she's really leaning into like this Midwestern grandma thing. So I do certainly think she collects things with butterflies on them, and there are just butterfly motifs all over her house, and every single year for Christmas, Peeta and Katniss get her some kind of fancy butterfly plate that she puts on a display that nobody's allowed to touch. Haymitch did give up drinking for good, and he sips coffee out of a mug all day that says "Number 1 Grandpa" on it. And whenever Haymitch and Effie have to babysit, Haymitch pretends that he hates it and doesn't want anything to do with it, but then Katniss and Peeta will, see him in the distance having the best time of his life, getting, like, harassed by their children, like having his hair put in pigtails and wearing makeup and stuff. I like the idea of Haymitch teaching Effie how to fish in the lake and trying to teach her how to bait a hook. But even further, I think that Effie would get really fixated on it and start learning about fly fishing and fly tying. And she would get really excited because if you know anything about fly tying, they look really cool and they're full of bright colors and things. And I think she would get really excited about it, and she would have like a fly fishing arc, and that would be like her new hobby. I can't get my braid to look as messy as Katniss's did in the arena. How did she do that with her hair? She lit it on fire. Go get a match and a tree branch from outside and hit me in the head with it. I don't care, just do it. What do you think? Does this look good? Do you think Tiberius will notice me at the feast later? Do you have any, like, feathers I can put on my clothes? Or, like, gold jewelry or something? No, Peepaw! Don't make me take this down. They're in love. That's what all the kids in District 12 called their grandfathers. Is that caviar? Absolutely not. I'm not going to eat it unless it's wild grosling, squirrel, or something with nuts and berries in it. Oh my god, is Katniss gonna shoot the arrow? Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh no, this is so bad. Oh no, the Capitol's losing? Gosh darn it. Why is Katniss looking at my peepaw like that? Oh damn. Shit. I'm coming, Peepaw! So the evil blonde Nepo baby has an arch nemesis who is dark-haired and only really came into his rich person school because he came into money and was a very special circumstance. And they spend pretty much every single waking second of every single day thinking about each other. And both of their names end with anus. A love interest? I mean, I guess that could become relevant in a second book, but I don't really see why that matters. Coriolanus didn't actually betray Sejanus when he killed him. It was a plan from the beginning. He was already dead when he recorded him talking about the Capitol with the Jabberjays. Nobody really forgot about Lucy Gray. The Capitol said they deleted everything, but really, they only deleted the negative memories of the Hunger Games. But everyone remembered the magic bell. No, of course Lucy Gray didn't die in the forest. She time-traveled 66 years into the future. What? No, Casca didn't hate Snow. He loved him. I know it looked like he hated him, but he loved him like a son, and he was looking out for him and protecting him the entire time.
I think everyone and their mother has seen this girl and her Freudian slip. But I want to talk about a different Freudian slip that most people have forgotten about.
The decision of one man to launch a wholly unjustified and brutal invasion of of Ukraine.
Either we as Americans are in complete denial of the shit that we do, or we know what we do is wrong, we just don't want to admit it.
I shouldn't be dating a woman that's more than 2/3 of his body weight. The woman should feel smaller. She needs to feel like he could kill her, but he's not gonna. If I'm holding a girl and subconsciously she knows that if I wanted to, I could pick her up and throw her into the wall.
Don't start saying that this world is equal, because it's really not. This type of man is more common than you think. And your biggest fear is rejection? Must be nice. Must really be fucking nice. Don't tell me that it's a joke. Don't tell me it's hyperbole. Because that's how a lot of things in bad situations start, is as a joke. Why'd you take it so seriously? Because he said it. Because that man, like many men out there, said it with his fucking chest. And you don't want me to take it seriously? No. What an absolute disgrace of a man. No wonder you're single. No wonder no one wants to date you. And you have to go on a podcast and talk bullshit. Wow. How unattractive. How fucking lame.
This actually turned out to not be White Woman Fantasy 101. I had no intentions of seeing this movie. I just thought it would be, glorifying or excusing pedophilia. It ended up being a heartbreaking and honestly disturbing look into the power dynamics between a woman of that age dating someone this young. This movie is about this woman who is an actress playing this woman who became famous for dating a 13-year-old boy. I thought It was going to show her learning that there was way more nuanced in their relationship and things like that. What I loved about this movie was that it showed there is actually no nuance in dating a 13-year-old. Every chance they get, they remind us that this poor child was manipulated into a 27-year relationship with no end in sight. That this woman is not well. She's sick. And it also shows us that any woman that empathizes with Julianne Moore's character is also sick. I don't understand why they went so hard in terms of acting, because both these women are already decorated. Like, they have nothing to prove. And yet they put their entire pussy into these performances. I know everyone is talking about Oh Boy, who plays the husband, but both these women were despicable. I hate it and love them at the same time. I didn't want to do this, but I have to be fair. So I'm going to go ahead and give it 5 out of 5 Frankie Flames. I was uncomfortable the entire time. The score was incredible. It was like the perfect villain music. And anytime I had a question, it was answered. It was honestly incredible.
Sally and Poseidon this, Sally and Poseidon that. I'm going to need y'all to stand up. Y'all talking about Poseidon, but he's still the same man who cheated on his wife and had multiple affairs with multiple women over the years. I don't want you to root for Sally and Poseidon. I want you to root for Sally and Paul, because not only does this man take care of her, treat her well, put her son into a school, and then they have a daughter together in the future. Like, he a cool dude. Root for them when Paul is introduced. Because at the end of the day, Sally and a lot of other demigod parents like her still got screwed over, even if they were the favorites, and that's real tea.
When we got married, there was a flip that was switched.
So she says after they were married, a flip switched and the abuse began. And this is actually incredibly common and well documented, and echoed in her comments. We were together for 5 years before we got married. When I tell you the day we got married, the switch flipped, it's just insane. 4 years of dating, no signs, honeymoon, all the red flags. The day I got married, 3 hours into it, I knew I was in trouble. Before that, everything was perfect. And yes, this is well documented, and this is from a domestic violence website. And they say over time, tension starts building. Usually when the abuser feels the victim is sufficiently hooked into the relationship, either through marriage, moving in together, or getting pregnant, the abuse starts. And not only is this well documented, this was also my personal experience. We bought a house together, the mask dropped. Here to scare anybody, I'm just here to inform. Because some abusers are incredibly calculative and can keep up a facade for a pretty long time. And while yes, we have things like how to spot an abuser early on, like if the relationship moves too quickly, sometimes that doesn't always apply. So what I do instead is focus on educating about covert abuse tactics, so we can spot manipulation and covert abuse before it escalates, and it always escalates. Because what happens is, just as a society, but also just us, we're very misinformed and undereducated about what constitutes abuse and what is coercive control and how we spot it. We just might feel like there's something off in the relationship, but not be able to identify it as abuse. So instead, if we focus on more the abuse tactics, we can leave before we're too sufficiently hooked. And that's what she did. Although they just got married, she was like, nope, I'm out of here. Really smart, because otherwise that could be years of hurt.
Is the pacing weird? Yes, but I think we have to remember that the pacing in the books is also weird. When you have books, especially in the fantasy genre, the pacing is always going to be weird because you have a lot of world building you have to do. And it is difficult to translate that pacing and exposition into a show or movie format. I mean, did we forget the Harry Potter movies? Because what the Harry Potter movies did to translate that weird pacing and exposition into movie format was to simply, for the most part, get rid of it. They cut out huge important chunks of plot and exposition, and as a result, for the most part, the movies have good pacing, for the most part, but they also don't make a lot of sense in many ways if you haven't read the books. Harry Potter book 4 has 8, count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pages of exposition that is just Barty Crouch Jr. explaining his backstory and what he was doing all year and the backstory for how Voldemort came back to life. And that is story that is essential to the plot. But it is basically just straight dialogue. He is just sitting there and telling Dumbledore everything that happened for 8 pages. So how did the movies go about translating that enormous amount of exposition into movie format? They simply didn't. They just cut it out. Does it make sense without it? Again, it makes enough sense. But the story in the movies as a whole simply isn't as good as in the books because they sacrificed story for better execution, right? There is a trade-off here when you're adapting very long fantasy books. You either get better pacing or a more coherent story. Now, obviously, this is a simplification. There are ways the show can improve the pacing and the exposition. I think one of the most notable examples is that instead of having Hermes make that allusion to time and then Percy explaining it to Annabeth, they could have just done what they did in the book. He runs into the man from the 70s, is like, dang, you're from the 70s. And that is a very great example of show, not tell. And it was right there in the book for them to take. I think they could have put emphasis on the fact that time was ticking, it was running out to really help keep the stakes high, the tension high, and the pace moving very quickly. But I do think if you want to have a coherent story overall, it's hard to do without a certain amount of exposition. I don't think it helps that exposition is hard for any actor to deliver, let alone child actors who don't have as much experience with difficult lines. Despite, like I said, all of them being insanely talented. I think that's another reason the exposition is just a little more noticeable, because if you compare that to the way Lin-Manuel Miranda, his whole monologue there was basically exposition, but the delivery felt very natural, so you don't notice it as much. So yeah, I think the show can improve by not giving these kids so much exposition to deal with. Is it possible to make an adaptation that has a perfectly balanced amount of exposition and good pacing? I think the Lord of the Rings movies is probably the closest thing we're going to get to that. But still, even in those movies, there was clearly still explanation that was sacrificed, which is why you get movie watchers asking things like, why couldn't they just fly the eagles to Mordor? I think what the Lord of the Rings did well to make Tolkien spending 8 pages talking about what Gandalf's horse's favorite color is work in movie format was they sacrificed the story that they could get away with sacrificing. So what I mean by that is that I think they sacrificed bits of the story that they assumed the audience could easily infer and really only kept the essential explanations. Obviously, this is not a simple task. I've seen a lot of people online saying, oh, well, the movies had better pacing. Yeah, that's because the movies sacrificed the entirety of the storytelling. That's why the pacing was better. We know adaptations are really hard to do because there are very few good adaptations. And considering how few good adaptations there are, I am going to choose to continue to be impressed by what the Percy Jackson show has accomplished.
I take the day to do my legal studies homework and I come back to TikTok and find out there's a race to discover what Walker Scott Bell's middle name is and y'all are making guesses. Like, why do we want to know that? Here are my guesses. Bartholomew, Wilhelm, Philippe, Augustus, Doyle, or Rufus. These are your options. Take it or leave it.
And he had 12 years old. With my dad. Tina and her fucking owl, man. 12. So 12. Mother voice. 12.
You shouldn't be an activist so that you can feel morally superior to other people. You don't do advocacy and activism work so that you can feel like you're taking some type of moral high ground or you're the bigger, better person and you can therefore shame other people for what they do and don't do. We do this work because we care. And the minute we stop doing it because we care and we do it just to flex, we see results like what we saw regarding the strike this past week and what we've seen this current week when it comes to what's happening in Palestine. In the last week, plus or minus, the death toll has hit almost 30,000 people. The IDF recently dressed up as hospital workers and then went inside a hospital to slaughter the people inside. People are starving, specifically North Gaza, but all of Gaza is starving. People are eating grass, drinking polluted water, making bread out of animal feed, and the general support is simmering down. It's honestly crickets at this point, besides the occasional, we really didn't do that strike right kind of energy. And a large part of why that's happening is because people treated support for Palestine like it was a trend, like it was a chance for them to flex and talk about how good they were and how they were going to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And the minute it got hard or the minute the eyes were off of them and the strike was over, they quit. Because we're not doing it because that's the right thing to do. We're doing it because of the attention it gives us and the superiority it feeds our egos. And that's the wrong reason to do it. We should be doing it because we care, and that means doing the stuff we were supposed to be doing during and before the strike, not eating at places like Starbucks and McDonald's, continuing to contact your legislatures, elevating Palestinian voices, donating eSIMs. All of that is still important. Because at this point, almost 30,000 people have lost their lives, exponentially more have been displaced, and every single Palestinian is going to carry this trauma for generations. And we don't just get to care for the brief moments where it makes us look good. We get to care and we get to do this work because it's the right thing to do. Don't dox me now. Let's try to be civil here. But while we're on the topic of Nicki Minaj and Megan Thee Stallion, there's nothing in Nicki Minaj's diss that Megan Thee Stallion hasn't already addressed in some capacity, whether it's consistently in her music throughout the years, like her relationship with her body and her own intimate life, or in her more recent song, Cobra, where she talks about how she struggles with her mental health and has been in some really dark places lately, how she has had a drinking problem, how she really misses her family, how she was betrayed by her partner. Like, she's already addressed all of these things. So it's not really a diss track. It's more like bullying somebody who has admittedly already been down. And say what you want about Nicki Minaj right now, I also want us to take this time to look at who the Barbs are. Not Nicki Minaj fans, not people who are like, oh, the song was okay. I mean like the hardcore Barbs, the stans, the people who are doxing people or threatening to desecrate Megan Thee Stallion's mom's grave. Like, let's look at who they are. And if you look, many, not all, but many are men. Gay men, to be exact, and largely white gay men, which means that the same people profiting and benefiting off of Black women and Black women aesthetics are the same people promoting and supporting, terrorizing this Black woman to such an extent that they are causing harm to many other people. When people say that gay men's experience with oppression, specifically white cis gay men, doesn't outweigh the privileges that they carry, or that they can't be exempt from conversations about racism and misogyny, or when they say that we don't want cis white gay men or cis gay men in general in predominantly female and femme spaces, this is exactly why. Because while this adult grown woman is bullying someone years and years and years, her junior, in a horrific fashion, they are backing her up to the detriment of anyone else. Y'all have got to stop recording strangers in public. I don't care if you have the right. You don't have the business to be recording people minding their business and then posting it online. Respect their privacy. Be a decent human being. Like, I don't know what this era is of acceptable public shaming where we just record absolute strangers doing things that we may or may not approve of, or doing things that are interesting or embarrassing, and posting that online without their knowledge or consent, or taking the video at all. It doesn't need to exist. Like, not only is that embarrassing and shameful for them and could have long-term repercussions on them, you're a bully. 9 times out of 10, you are not the hero in that scenario. Like, I saw this video on the Bird app of this woman who I would assume is unhoused, who was doing drugs, kind of huddled up in a corner with her back turned, but like in broad daylight. And this couple decided to take out their phones and record her and shame her for doing that in front of their kids. Now, this is neither safe nor sanitary, and I'm not endorsing what she was up to, but they needed to walk away. Instead of leaving their children in that environment so that they could have the content to shame this woman and then post it online, our job as people, their job as people, was to walk away. If they were really concerned about her, maybe see if she needed help, get help, but realistically, mind your business and walk away. Like, y'all are so comfortable being bullies for no other reason than clout, and it needs to stop. Let people have their privacy. You don't like an outfit? Cool, don't say anything about it. You don't like what somebody's up to? Cool, you walk away. But this public shaming thing, dead it. Welcome to season 3 of Black History Fast Facts, where every day in February I give you a fact about Black history you might not have known. Today's fast fact: potato chips as we know them were invented by a pair of Black siblings. Born in 1824, George Speck, aka George Crumb, spent his early years developing his cooking skills in the Adirondack Mountains, eventually earning him a place as a cook at the Moons Lake House on Saratoga Lake, a popular vacationing spot for rich white tourists. Years later, his younger sister Kate went on to join him. Now, there are 2 versions as to how the chip came to be. In version 1, Crumb is going back and forth with a picky customer who's complaining that his french fries are not thin enough or salty enough. And out of spite or humor, Crumb makes them super thin and super salty, and to everyone's surprise, the guy loves them. In version 2, Kate makes the chip when she accidentally cuts a potato way too thin and it falls on some hot oil. Crumb tastes it, and he loves it. The rest is history. History suggests that theory 2 is more likely, but either way, the chips become so popular that when Crumb opens his own restaurant, he puts a basket on every table, and eventually they're mass-marketed in bags around the states. So the next time you bite into the salty goodness that is the potato chip, remember to thank the Speck siblings. And that's your Black History Fast Fact. So there's Taylor Swift discourse on my timeline. You know, I have to chime in as somebody who has consistently loved her music throughout my entire life, but cannot stand the woman that she has grown into. And when I say I love Taylor Swift's music, I mean, up until recently, I have physically purchased all of her CDs so I could do the little decode thing in them. I have her merch. I went to the Eras tour. I'm going through a breakup right now, and I'm trying to figure out what I'm supposed to listen to if not Blondie. But when I say I can't stand who she's become as a person, and I think it's insane that Swifties refuse to acknowledge the fact that she isn't this like cultural icon, I stand on that. Not only is she an ecological nightmare, like the damage her and that private jet are going to do over Super Bowl weekend is so outrageous that even Fox News is like, what are you doing? But she refuses to take a stand on any relevant current social issue. I mean, we can barely call her a feminist icon at this point. Yet Swifties make content like this, and my mutual at Rinstar did a much better video on this, but it's insane to call her an icon and a pioneer for racial justice because she spoke out for voting like once or twice. Because that kind of like bare minimum work does cancel out when you turn around and date someone who is like actively racist. Like, I get a rebound, but baby, rebound better. And yet this unwavering delusional loyalty from the Swifties, a huge population of people, is exactly why we hold celebrities to a higher account than we hold politicians. Because celebrities are supposed to connect to us and be our voice by nature of their job in a way that politicians just aren't. And everyone knows that, even politicians. As Swifties continue making content like this, celebrating her for the barest minimum while overlooking her glaring flaws, Joe Biden is actively trying to get her to say again, vote for him, because he knows the last time that happened, people flocked to the polls, and it kind of shaped how the election played out. And there's just nothing that these ancient politicians are going to do or say that's going to make you feel the way that your favorite celebrity does, which is why it's so important that they use their voice for actual change and actual good in a present tense sense. And that is why, and my mutual Peyton made a video on this, so I'll shout him out as well, it is so important that she says things like free Palestine, because that one bare minimum thing that she could say could yank in an entire large population of people to learn about and get behind this increasingly urgent movement. While there's no universe where you can convince me that Blondie is an icon for racial equality, she has consistently said that she's a feminist, but not caring about a global crisis where miscarriages are up 300%. People are dying from not having access to adequate menstrual products. Babies are being born into a world that can only be described as a hellscape. The silence is really shattering here. Because again, ignoring the fact that she is an absolute environmental pariah, her voice matters. That is the voice that has coached me and millions of others through decades of heart flutters and heartbreaks, creating a community that would have never existed otherwise on the size, scale, and honestly diversity that it does. And for her to continuously ignore the voices, begging her to do a semblance of good while feeding into the delusion that is the rest of the Swifties, creating a personality for her that doesn't exist. Yeah, dude, she's not the best person, and we can hold her to that level of account. And it doesn't mean you like her music any less. It does mean that we can critique her as a person, though. Swifties, there's a difference between blatant misogyny and valid criticisms of your fave. Let me walk you through it since you seem to be a little bit stuck. Misogyny is the fact that every single time this woman experienced any degree of heartbreak and put it in a song, heartbreak that we all experience at some point in our lives, from the time that she was an actual young teenager, she has been slandered in the media. She's been SLUT shamed. She's been told that her music isn't good and that she's not a very talented artist or songwriter. All of her accomplishments have been diminished because she dates. That's misogyny. Because A, everybody dates, especially men in abundance, and B, lots of musicians put their real experiences in songs. She is no different, including the men who are often slandering her. So that's misogyny. It is diminishing her accomplishments and belittling her as a person because she is a woman. That's misogyny. Valid criticisms of Taylor Swift include the things she's actually doing that none of you can seem to rebut. Because as much as y'all like to claim that she's just a singer, she's just a celebrity, she has no obligation to care about other people, that's not true because that's not the brand that she's built for herself circa Miss Americana documentary. Yes, Swifties, I've seen it too. Remember, I did like her. It's why her, Beyonce, and other celebrities who have made a name for themselves and profited off of caring about social justice movements are catching the most heat in relation to other celebrities because they have built their brand, taking your coin off of those alleged actions. Never mind the fact that with a voice that powerful, you should have some type of obligation socially to care about other living, breathing human beings the way that humans should care about others. But that's literally what they took your coin from. So yeah, we should hold them to some level of account. It's not even like her voice wouldn't be impactful. We've seen how impactful it can be because when she said, oh, we should all go vote, people did so. It turned the tide of the election in a big way, a way so big that Joe Biden is actively, currently, essentially groveling at her feet, begging for her to do it again. Meaning that her voice, out of all of the other regular people that you guys have deluded yourselves into thinking that she is way more powerful than the average Joe. The gag is y'all act like asking her to do things like call for a ceasefire or at least acknowledge the atrocities happening in Palestine are some radical movement that would make her a lifelong activist and would alter her character. Dude, making a post takes like 10 seconds. Anyone on her entire team could do it. She's risking practically nothing by doing so. I, a regular person who works 4 jobs, could lose any one of my 4 jobs from this. Taylor Swift has the cushioning of $1 billion. She gonna be all right. And the wildest thing about defending her is that you are forced to eventually acknowledge the fact that she doesn't care about you either. You are a means to an end. You are a way for her to maintain the fact that she can fly in her private jet, use thousands and thousands of gallons of fuel to skirt back and forth to see her boyfriend, and then not pay the consequences of any of that. Because someday all the Black and brown people that you sacrificed for the environment are going to die, and it's going to be you left choking on the smog, drinking the polluted water, suffering all of the environmental consequences that come with, ruining the environment. And she will again have the cushioning and protection of the billions of dollars and not care about you. The next time you want to say, oh, you're just like the misogynistic man always criticizing her, remember that they and I have nothing in common, because I would never shame a woman for feeling, for loving, for creating the way that they do, but I will hold a woman accountable for her own actions or lack thereof. This whole fascination with the idea that we are not obligated to do anything to help other people or to care about humanitarian crises is exactly how I know, if left up to y'all, Black folk would still be enslaved. Because y'all weren't signing petitions, y'all weren't advocating for the end of Jim Crow, y'all weren't walking with Martin Luther King, y'all aren't doing nothing because you're not obligated to. In fact, it's exactly why 90% of folk don't know what the land back movement is here in the United States. It's exactly why y'all continue to go to Hawaii. It's exactly why COVID is going around like the actual bubonic plague right now. It's exactly why nothing came out of the BLM 2020 protests that lasted almost a year besides a bunch of black squares. Because y'all do not understand the idea of doing something for the collective good and being held accountable for being a part of the collective. Because all the people who say this, and I can think of 30 in my comment section off the dome alone, are correct. You or Taylor Swift or anybody else are not obligated to do anything for anyone, and there's nothing that myself or any other internet rando can do to change your mind. But it's absolutely bonkers that you are using this whole we're not obligated to do anything free will kind of ideology to justify a lack of basic human decency. So you're right, nobody's obligated to do anything for anybody. Not you, not Blondie the billionaire, not her celebrity best friends, not your best friend, your neighbor, or your mama. But when you find yourself asking why the horrors persist, be it genocide, racism, bigotry, or things that directly impact you, since that's all most of us seem to care about, like the crushing impact of capitalism as it costs us our homes, our jobs, and our health, livelihood, and well-being, the answer will be because you stood there and let it happen. Because none of us were obligated to do anything about it. And I don't like that answer. But y'all seem to. Welcome back to Black History Fast Facts, where every day in February I give you a fact about Black history you might not have known. Today's fast fact, Trayvon Martin should have turned 29 today. Born on February 5th, 1995, to parents Sabrina Fulton and Tracy Martin, Trayvon Martin was a young Black boy with a deep love for family and a passion for music, football, and aviation. One summer at age 12, he took an aviation course, unlocking his unknown passion for planes. And by 13, he was in aviation school, making accomplishments like learning how to land a plane. However, his brilliant life and all his potential were cut short on February 26, 2012, when he was followed by George Zimmerman for looking suspicious in a predominantly white neighborhood. Despite clear police instruction to not follow, Zimmerman engaged in a fatal altercation with a 17-year-old boy, shooting him in the fight. And after his trial, the jury shocked the nation by acquitting him of all charges. Despite the devastating loss, Martin's legacy lives on through social movements like BLM that advocates for the thousands of lives lost by police brutality and gun violence. And while he should be spending today laughing, partying, and celebrating another decade filled with the love that he was so used to, we should honor his legacy by continuing to advocate for racial injustice. Happy birthday, Trayvon. And that's your Black History Fast Fact.
I hope you know that occupation forces stripping down Palestinian boys and men and posting those photos and videos online is a form of sexual violence. And they are not just detained and stripped. They are blindfolded, they are handcuffed, and they are tortured. They are forced to stand and sit almost naked in the rain and cold. And a photo went viral today of a Palestinian man who was stripped down to his underwear and was being beaten by an Israeli soldier. And again, it was a soldier that posted this photo online that has gone viral. That is a form of sexual violence. This is what a Palestinian man had to say after being detained by occupation forces. They forced me to take off all of my clothes, and they took pictures of me. They beat me intensely. I was naked during this. It was humiliating. The worst part was when the dogs were attacking me. This is sexual violence. And the West wants you to believe these dehumanizing narratives about Palestinian men so that they can do these things and it's fine and there are no repercussions. And on a global scale, no one is condemning it. And there are a large number of minors who are included in this as well. Palestinian boys and men deserve freedom and safety. They deserve to live in a free Palestine. Free Palestine.
I'm gonna be that girl, but Ariana Grande, I can't support like any future albums. I think I see so many people that have like so quickly looked past her actions with like just the cheating and that stuff. And
isn't it funny how we as a society have a really hard time not listening to serial abusers like Chris Brown, Kodak Black? Like, they're embedded in hip hop culture. If you like Kendrick Lamar, you're gonna end up listening to some abuser. Almost all of these men have cheating scandals. Think about Future. Think about the things that they're talking about, but we really rarely bring up the moral wrongings of like Future or even like a Travis Scott at this point. But if a woman has allegedly cheated, death to her. I just don't know if I agree with the moral standards for women in entertainment, because if you think about how we consume male content, we're not like thinking, oh, I really agree with Future's lifestyle and I approve of his choices, and that's why I'm bopping my head to this. But when it's a woman, it's like, well, I know that I should be blaming him too. And I'm not condoning the behavior at all. I want to make that so clear. I just can't help but see the glaring double standards. I couldn't in good conscience do that if I were to go through my library and look at all the men that I end up listening to, because I enjoy music. And so I'm going to have to end up listening to a lot of even misogynistic lyrics, not to mention what these men are doing in their actual lives. But we let it slide because honestly, we as consumers of the culture really barely have a choice. You could talk about even Migos. We can talk about Offset. There's so many things that we talk about like as a culture, but we don't say, oh, we're gonna stop listening to Future now because he's a serial cheater. I don't know that anyone has ever said that. Do you know what I'm saying? We laugh at him along with Sierra. We go, ha ha ha, ha ha ha. I don't think he raised that kid. Russell Wilson raised that kid. Ha ha ha. But we don't go, I don't agree with the moral standard, and I don't think I can, and it just makes me giggle because I'm not saying like this person is wrong for, obviously they can support whoever they want or they can not support whoever they want. I just think as a society, the fact that it's such in the conversation, her alleged infidelity as a reason why you want to like boycott Ariana Grande. And that's totally fine though. Like, you're totally allowed to do that. But I also can't help but laugh, like seeing as a culture how hard it is for anyone to stop listening to Chris Brown. For anybody to stop listening to a lot of men who have done way worse things and unalived people. And that they don't get any of these videos coming up, well, I don't know if I should be listening to them, because you don't look for that from them. And it's like, I don't know, it's just women always have to like be really, really squeaky clean for nobody to say, well, they don't deserve the support. And it's like, they might not deserve the support, but they just never get to misbehave in the same ways that men get away with and get to continue being completely successful, and nobody really tries to undermine their talent or their career or question if they should be allowed to be received still. And like, I'm not really interested in Ariana Grande's ethics. I really don't. I mean, until it gets to the point of like red rum, like, sorry, it's 21 Savage, his album came out, and I've been listening to Red Rum. That's why. That's murder backwards. Anyway, I think there's like such a threshold of like when we're talking about women's failings, and we talk about it like it's equal to like what's really going on that like men in entertainment do all the time and nobody really talks about, and then we like act like those are the same weight because we really expect so much from women. Even as women, we really expect, and I don't know if it's a lot to ask to like not be a man stealer, but like I can't in good conscience act like any of the male artists that I listen to do better than that. And I have to be honest with myself and know that, and know what my expectations are for them, and then take a look at what my expectations are for the women that I listen to, whatever art they're making. I don't know. It's just interesting. And I'm not saying at all like that this person is wrong. Like, you're allowed to support or not support whoever you want, but you know, I see a lot of people talking about Ariana's new song in that way, and you're allowed to. I just think it's interesting what the standard that we hold women to.
The 1.5 million Palestinians currently seeking refuge in Rafah are going to be told to evacuate. That is 1.5 million people being told to flee the one safe place they were supposed to have, because Netanyahu is planning on attacking the region. If you remember when this all began in October, meaning the current genocide, Israel told Palestinians to flee the north and head south because they were going to terrorize the north. And they did. We saw thousands and thousands of people die as they absolutely eviscerated the earth. It is largely rubble at this point. And since then, they have pushed Palestinians further and further south into this point right here, which is Rafah, the most southern point you can get in Palestine before you hit Egypt. And they are being told yet again to evacuate, begging the question, where are they supposed to go? This is on the heels of Netanyahu rejecting yet another hostage agreement, one that would guarantee the Palestinians a ceasefire, one that they so desperately need, and Israel the hostages back that they say they so desperately want. Netanyahu has said on multiple occasions that he does not plan on stopping until he has had a total victory on Hamas, meaning that he has eliminated every Palestinian, whether it is taking their lives or removing them from their homes. And by attacking Rafah, their last safe place and the most southern point that they can go, he clearly plans on making that happen. If we do nothing about this, if there is no ceasefire, if this takes place, we are going to witness a tragedy that we have not seen yet. I think it's harder for us to internally acknowledge and accept the role that we, the people, directly have in what's happening in the DRC in a way that we don't have to accept when it comes to Palestine. And so it's harder for us to talk about, but we should talk about it anyway. Girl, what do you mean? Well, if you didn't know, in the Democratic Republic of Congo, there's an ongoing genocide people are calling a silent genocide. And this crisis has been taking place literally for decades. Hundreds of thousands of people work in the mines in the DRC, including a guesstimate of about 40,000 children, ages as young as 4 years old. But again, that's just a guesstimate. Millions of people have been displaced internally, like 7 million. And since the conflict began in 1996, 6 million people have been unalived. And what's it all for? Their resources: copper, lithium, gold, and most notably nowadays, cobalt, which is that thing that we need to power a lot of our lithium ion batteries. That stuff that keeps your laptop charged, your phone charged, your vape. Yeah. This is when that idea that there's no ethical consumption under capitalism comes into play. Obviously, we didn't just walk into the Apple store with this knowledge in mind that we were contributing to this genocide. But now that we know it, it's really hard for us to stop doing the things we've been doing and detangle ourselves. But we need to. If you don't have money to donate, like most of us, the best thing that you can do is actually stop buying things. Stop buying new phones as soon as they drop. Stop buying the latest Apple Watch or MacBook or whatever those like goggles are that are atrocious to wear in public. Stop vaping. I know it's hard, but if you can't do it for you, do it for them. That's the best thing we can do outside of donating money and telling other people. So yeah, it's weird and uncomfortable to know that just to make this video and just for you to see this video, we have now both contributed to the ongoing genocide in the Congo. But with that knowledge in mind, we should operate accordingly. even if it's uncomfortable in a way that it isn't in other scenarios.
I just saw 2 different videos about men complaining about the ugly friend at the bar, like blocking them from talking to the hot friend. And these 2 men both framed it as this ugly friend, aka just the friend they don't find as attractive, is jealous of and bitter of their attractive friend. And while it's totally possible that a woman can be jealous of her friend, most of the time, that's not what's happening. This is copium, my guy. Here's the dynamic that you're missing. Usually, this ugly friend, this is their language, but basically, the woman they don't find attractive, usually that woman is bigger. She's fat, she's larger, she's taller, whatever it is. They're just not drawn to her in the same way they're drawn to the little 5'3" girl that's 100 pounds soaking wet. And sometimes that 5'3" woman is not interested in talking to you, but you're 5'11", my guy, and she's afraid to tell you that, or to signal it in any way that's not like, no thanks, or like, oh no, I'm okay, and you're just not hearing her. And that's when someone like me steps in. I'm 5'9", and I'm not worried about having a power imbalance against you as much as she is. So I literally insert myself between you and her. In fact, most of the time, when men get uppity or rowdy or they're drunk and they just won't stop, it's women defending other women. Do you know how many times I've had to come to the defense of women I do not know at bars because there is a drunk guy who just will not stop? And there are plenty of men around us, and the guys don't do anything. It's not until the drunk guy starts gesticulating wildly or speaking too loud, or one of the women are like, you need to stop, and we like project it, and some guy intervenes and pulls away their, 5'11" friend who could, really hurt one of us if they really don't know any better. So next time one of her friends is telling you that she's not interested, it's probably because she's not.
I'm becoming increasingly convinced that we are headed towards an artistic apocalypse. I know that sounds dramatic, but this technology should scare absolutely everyone. In case you hadn't heard, yesterday OpenAI announced their newest technology. They're calling it Sora. It is a text-to-video engine that allows people to use word prompts to create photorealistic video. Every single video in this thread is 100% AI generated, and it's something that absolutely cannot be stressed enough, that every single AI generator that exists is trained off of existing art. It is trained off of art and words and writing that often they don't obtain permission from the original artist before they feed them into their generators to learn how to recreate their work, essentially. But before I get into all of the many ways that this is objectively horrifying from a human and artistic standpoint, I want you to think about all of the immediate real-world applications of this technology. Think about the way this technology could be used in a surveillance state. Think about the way this technology could be used in a court of law with a potentially corrupt legal system and law enforcement system. This technology absolutely will be used to inflict trauma and humiliation by way of things like AI deepfake porn or anything else that you can think of that is humiliating or degrading. The worst things you can think of that could be used with this technology, I guarantee you will be used with this technology. And the ease of use and accessibility means that children will inevitably have access to this as well. There are a million terrifying applications for this. I cannot even imagine how one would protect themselves from scams or identity theft with technology like this. Of course, there'll be rampant political propaganda AI deepfakes. Something absolutely everyone needs to consider is the way that this technology could be used to discredit the validity of things like genocide that are happening in the world right now. I think Holocaust deniers are bad now. Imagine when technology like this is normalized and people can see real footage of human suffering being inflicted by, say, an authoritarian government and say, well, who even knows if that's real? Or worse, governments using this technology to create artificial evidence of atrocities they claimed happen but have no evidence of. Like, this is absolutely terrifying in terms of the misinformation that is possible. And I personally find it absolutely disgusting that this technology barely exists. It's in its infancy, and the very first application that people want to use it for in this world is to eliminate artists. I've seen so many people say, oh, well, it'll never really be able to replace humans. We'll always know the difference. And the thing is, no, we won't. The way that this technology has advanced in a single year is absolutely astounding. Any deficiency you can think of right now that you can say, oh, well, it can't do this thing that a human can do, it will learn way faster than you think it will. Artists have been underpaid and undervalued since forever, and it's only gotten worse with the rise of film as the most prolific art form of the modern age. I think film is great, but it is inextricably tied to capitalism. Art and entertainment are kind of indiscernible from one another sometimes because of the world we live in and the fact that film is art, but film is also a capitalist endeavorment to make money. Art is born out of passion and it inspires passion. I just don't understand why that would ever be something that we would want to fucking streamline. People don't go into art to become rich and famous. I'm sure it's nice when that does happen, but most artists feel a burning need to create. And that comes from needing to connect with people, needing to make sense of the cruel and chaotic senselessness of our existence, to find meaning in this fucking world. And I'm so sorry, but being good at putting sentences together to throw into a generator that's going to spit art out on the other side is not what that is. This is the thing about automation and the way AI is going to eventually be used in all industries, is that it is fundamentally stripping us of our reasons to be alive. There are studies that show that once people retire, they die earlier. Work, even busy work, even monotonous bullshit jobs that we hate, give us a reason to get out of bed in the morning and live. And I am all for finding a way to use this technology to improve people's lives, to make it so they have to work less and live more. But that is not the direction that this is going. And the scariest thing about all of this to me, not just as someone who identifies as an artist, not just as someone who really believes that art is one of, if not the most meaningful things you can devote your life to, but just as a human who has existed in this world that has become increasingly more isolated, increasingly more digital, increasingly more performative, is that I look around and I see the average person does not give a fuck about any of this. Because for over a decade now, we've had this conditional programming, this dopamine hit after dopamine hit, this artificial identity that we have to construct for ourselves to perform on the internet all the time is becoming increasingly our real identity. And people don't care about the real fucking world. All of this is so strategically designed to stimulate the pleasure triggers in our brain, to slowly turn us into these perfect, docile consumers who don't need real world comforts because we have virtual fun. Like, it's fine that we're all getting poorer and nobody can afford anything because we don't actually need real money to do most of the things we want to do online. Whether or not you believe it's intentional, this is what's happening. We're being stripped of the things that make us human. Our sense of community has crumbled as we become more isolated in this digital space, and now our sense of artistic expression is being replaced by the literal click of a button. It is so dystopian. The conversation around generative AI makes it painfully clear that so many people do not view the labor and time and effort and energy that artists put into perfecting their craft and becoming a master of their craft as nearly as valuable as other kinds of labor. Because the tech bros saying things like this is going to end gatekeeping or create an equal playing field in artistic industries are simply saying that they don't think it's worth their time to learn these skills on their own. But now it's great for them because a machine will do it for them. That's not surprising coming from tech bros because their whole thing is gaming systems, right? But if you genuinely think that the only thing stopping you from being a great filmmaker, a great artist, is the fact that you don't have millions of dollars, you have already illustrated that you do not care to learn even the first thing about how films get made. And if you don't care to learn the first thing about how films get made, how can you expect anyone to respect that you have any real artistic drive at all? There are many recent films that cost tens, sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars that are absolute shit. Money does not equal quality. Conversely, countless acclaimed filmmakers got their start making short films that cost next to nothing, and sometimes feature films on micro budgets, meaning less than $15,000. Robert Rodriguez famously made his directorial debut, El Mariachi, on a budget of $7,000, submitted it to the Sundance Film Festival, and won the Audience Favorite Award. That launched his entire career. And this was back when he had to shoot on film because people didn't have access to digital cameras. You know how many directors have made movies shot 100% on iPhones now just to prove that it's possible? Steven Soderbergh made that Claire Foy movie Unsane. Tangerine, Sean Baker. Like, we have so much more access now than we ever have to the kind of technology to allow us to make art. You know how many people have come up on YouTube? Issa Rae, Quinta Brunson, the guys that made Talk to Me. Skinamarink came out last year. It cost $15,000 to make. The Duplass brothers, their first movie is called The Puffy Chair. Cost $15,000. Launched their entire careers. Being a filmmaker, just like any other craft, just like any other artistry, is about showing up. It's about putting in the time and being willing to make mistakes and learn, okay? Scorsese, Spielberg, they would be nowhere near the master craftsmen they are now if they hadn't started off by making silly little movies with their friends when they were young and growing and learning and putting in the work. The reason why artists are so offended by generative AI is not just because it was trained on their stolen works, but also because you are ostensibly trying to remove all humanity from the artistic process. And at best, takes like this are incredibly naive because in order to create just one fully produced shot, it's dozens of people's expertise and labor that goes into that. So to completely take all of those people out of the process and skip to a finished project created by a computer not only devalues the labor and effort and passion that artists bring to the table, but it's assuming that this isn't going to be used to put every single artist out of work by studios that have already made it clear in the recent WGA strike that they want to start implementing implementing machine writing instead of human writing. Like the irony in seeing people say things like, oh, I'm finally going to be able to express myself artistically. I'm finally going to be able to translate what I see in my head on the page by clicking a button, is that any artist will tell you, it takes years of practice to be able to do that. It takes years of honing your craft to find your style, to find your sense of expression, and to get better. Artistry is not a God-given talent. Like anything else, there are people who are born with advantages, with natural abilities. But in order to get really good at your craft, you have to practice. It doesn't matter what that craft is. It doesn't matter if it's photography or traditional painting or digital painting or anything, literally anything. You have to work at it to get better. If you really want to make quality films, what is stopping you? Genuinely, what is stopping you? It's not millions of dollars. Other people have proven you wrong there. And that's the crux of this whole thing, isn't it? It's not that anything is actually stopping you. It's that you want it to be easy. You want it to be easier. That's not a level playing field. That's a cheat code. That's a hack. And it's bullshit. It's absolutely bullshit. And to think that the people at the top in our capitalist society will not use that to exploit and remove people from the labor force is wildly naive. People want to call me a Luddite or say I'm against innovation. Why don't you Google what happened to the Luddites? Or why they were angry in the first place? Or better yet, why don't you Google what working conditions are like right now for VFX workers? This is not a battle against technology. This is people who understand the systems that we live under, the world that we live in, and know that this is dangerous because of the world we live in.